2 years ago, I decided to adopt a dog. Not just any dog, but a golden retriever. His name was Milo, and I swear he was the sweetest, most lovable creature I'd ever met. He had that quintessential golden retriever energy, constantly wagging his tail like it was an automatic built-in feature. I'd never seen a dog so genuinely happy to be alive, so full of joy at the simple things. He'd look at me with those big brown eyes, and I couldn't help but laugh at how unconditionally affectionate he was. When I adopted him, I thought I was getting a typical dog, one that would need daily walks, a good amount of playtime, and a ton of attention. And that was true for the most part. But Milo was also surprisingly independent. He loved to hang out in the yard, sniffing around, chasing the occasional squirrel, and just basking in the sun. There was something so peaceful about seeing him lounging outside, content and carefree. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the houses are spaced apart, and the yards are filled with lush grass and flowers. It's one of those places where people leave their gates open, and the neighborhood feels like a big, welcoming community. It was the perfect place for a dog like Milo to roam freely and enjoy the fresh air. I trusted him. He'd been with me for a few months now, and I knew that he liked to explore the yard. But there was one thing I didn't anticipate. Milo had a secret. One afternoon I was sitting at my desk, working on some emails with the window open. I could hear the sound of birds chirping and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. It was a typical peaceful day. But then, it got a little too quiet. At first I thought maybe Milo had just found a comfy spot to nap. He did that sometimes, especially after playing fetch for a while. But then, the minutes started ticking by. I glanced at the clock. It had been way too long. I stood up, peered out the window, and didn't see him. Panic shot through me. "Milo?" I called out, my voice shaking a little. "Milo!" I rushed out the front door, leash in hand, my heart pounding. I scanned the street, calling his name over and over, but there was no sign of him. My mind immediately started racing. Had he run off? Was he lost? I had always trusted him to stay close to home, so why was he suddenly gone? I started walking down the street, trying not to freak out, but it was impossible. My dog, my sweet, goofy Milo, was nowhere to be found. I called his name even louder, the panic rising inside me. I walked past a few houses, my mind spinning with all kinds of worst-case scenarios. I could feel my stomach sinking with every step. Milo had never disappeared like this before. Was he in danger? Was something wrong? And then, just when I was about to give up hope, I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. There, about 3 houses down, I saw a figure sitting on a porch. The dog in front of them was unmistakable. It was Milo, sitting on the porch like he owned the place. But it wasn't just that. Milo was lounging there, completely relaxed, with his head up high and his tongue hanging out in pure bliss. And next to him? An older woman was sitting in a rocking chair, holding a plate of food. She was feeding him pieces of chicken. I stood there frozen, my mind trying to catch up with what I was seeing. Was this real? What was going on? "Milo?" I called out, my voice wavering in disbelief. Milo turned his head at the sound of my voice, and then he did something that completely threw me off guard. He wagged his tail, and I mean wagged it, like he was thrilled to see me, but not in the way you'd expect from a dog that had just been found after disappearing for an hour. The woman looked up from her plate, smiling kindly as she adjusted her glasses. "Oh, you must be Milo's other family," she said, as though this was a completely normal situation. I was speechless for a moment, my brain struggling to make sense of it all. "Other family?" I repeated, trying to process the words. The woman chuckled, setting the plate down on the porch next to her. "Yes, dear. Milo's been visiting me for a few months now. He's a lovely dog. Comes by a couple of times a week, sits on my porch, and I give him a treat or two. He's the best company I've had in a long time." It took a second for me to fully comprehend what she was saying. Milo, my dog, had been sneaking away from me and visiting this woman, Mrs. Patterson, without me knowing, for months? I felt a strange mix of emotions, confusion, embarrassment, and then amusement. Here I thought I had this sweet, obedient dog who was just the picture of loyalty. But Milo had been living a double life, and I had no idea. "Well, I'm so sorry," I said, trying to apologize for his behavior. "He's a good boy, but I didn't realize he was, making himself at home here." Mrs. Patterson waved her hand dismissively, smiling warmly. "Oh, it's no trouble at all. I've been rather lonely, and Milo has been a wonderful little visitor. I just give him a little snack now and then, and he's happy as can be." I laughed nervously, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. Milo wasn't lost. He was just living his best life, apparently. "I guess we need to make this official, huh?" I said, looking at Milo, who was now happily lying on the porch as though this were his second home. "Well, that's up to you," Mrs. Patterson said with a wink. "But Milo has definitely become a regular around here." After my initial shock wore off, I started to see the humor in the situation. Milo had been sneaking away behind my back, living a life I didn't even know about. The more I thought about it, the funnier it seemed. I mean, how long had this been going on? I couldn't help but laugh at how Milo had somehow managed to pull off this secret life without me noticing. But then, as I looked at him, lounging on Mrs. Patterson's porch like he was the king of the neighborhood, a thought hit me. What had I been missing? How many more surprises did my sweet, innocent dog have up his sleeve? I glanced at Mrs. Patterson, who was still smiling fondly at Milo, and then back at the golden retriever. He was happily wagging his tail, his eyes half closed in contentment. It was clear that he wasn't just a dog, he was some kind of furry socialite splitting his time between two families. "Well, I suppose I should thank you for being so kind to him," I said, chuckling as I walked closer to the porch. "I had no idea he'd been visiting you. I thought he was just out in the yard." Mrs. Patterson gave me a gentle laugh. "It's no problem at all. He's been a joy to have around. It's nice to have someone who just enjoys sitting on the porch and keeping me company." She paused for a moment, then added, "Honestly, he's the best little companion I've had in years. My kids are grown, and I'm on my own most of the time. Milo has been a blessing, and I'm glad he found his way here." I could tell by the way she spoke that this wasn't just about feeding him scraps. Milo had genuinely become a source of comfort and joy for her. She wasn't just feeding him chicken, she was offering him something more. Friendship. A connection that I hadn't expected him to make. "Well, I guess I'll just have to make sure he doesn't spend too much time here," I said jokingly, trying to hide the small pang of guilt I felt. I didn't want to take away something that seemed to bring her happiness. But at the same time, I wasn't about to let Milo go off and start living a double life without me. Mrs. Patterson smiled and patted Milo gently. "You don't have to worry about that, dear. I know Milo's loyal to you, but it's been nice to share him every now and then. I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot of him at your place too." Milo looked up at me then, his tail wagging at full speed. I could almost hear him thinking, "I'm happy, I'm fed, and I have two homes. What more could a dog want?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "All right, buddy, let's go home." Mrs. Patterson waved us off as we walked back down the driveway. "I'll see you both soon, Milo," she called out. Milo gave a friendly bark in response, and that was that. He had made his choice. He was living the good life, enjoying the best of both worlds. As we walked back to our house, I couldn't help but think about how my life had just become a little more complicated. Milo had always been a good dog, but now I had to share him with someone else. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Part of me was grateful that Milo had found someone who cared for him and gave him the attention he needed, especially since I wasn't always home during the day. But at the same time, there was a small part of me that felt betrayed. Was he secretly living a life of luxury while I was at work? When we finally got home, Milo trotted in like nothing had happened, as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. He looked up at me with his signature doggy grin, and I couldn't help but laugh, as if he were saying, "What's the big deal?" I sat down on the couch shaking my head. "You're something else, aren't you, Milo?" But as much as I was trying to wrap my head around it, I had to admit, Milo had every right to enjoy life in his own way. Who was I to deny him some extra chicken and a little affection from Mrs. Patterson? Maybe he was living the dream, a life of leisure, plenty of snacks, and the best of both worlds. For the next few weeks, I began to embrace this new arrangement. I started making weekly trips to Mrs. Patterson's house to drop off some groceries. It wasn't much, but it felt like the right thing to do. If Milo was going to be a part of her life, I wanted to make sure she had everything she needed as well. Every time I'd visit her, I'd find Milo right where I left him, happily lounging on her porch, tail wagging, waiting for his next treat. Mrs. Patterson and I would chat for a bit while Milo enjoyed his snacks, and I began to think of her almost like a second grandmother to him. I knew I could never fully get over the fact that Milo had been living this secret life behind my back, but at the same time, I couldn't deny that it had brought something positive into both our lives. Milo was happier, Mrs. Patterson was happier, and I felt a little lighter knowing that Milo had so many people who cared about him. Milo didn't just have 2 homes, he had 2 families. And honestly, I was kind of jealous of how easy it was for him to juggle his time between the 2 of us. If only I could be so carefree. As the weeks went on, I found myself getting more used to the idea of Milo having a second family. In fact, I began to look forward to the moments when we'd all be together. I'd visit Mrs. Patterson every Sunday, dropping off groceries and sharing a few laughs. And every time, Milo would be right there, as if he had just been waiting for me to arrive. It became a comforting routine. Mrs. Patterson and I would chat about life, about the neighborhood, and about Milo's latest antics. It was obvious that the bond between them had deepened. She'd often tell me about the little things Milo did during his visits, how he'd wait for her to get her morning coffee, how he'd sit at the foot of her rocking chair and stare at her lovingly as she read her book, how he'd never once minded the stray cat that occasionally visited her porch. To Milo, life was all about the people and treats that made him feel loved, and I started to realize that perhaps this was Milo's way of spreading his joy to more than just one person. Maybe he saw something in Mrs. Patterson that I hadn't noticed, the loneliness in her eyes, the quietness of her home, and he simply wanted to be there for her. It was both heartwarming and humbling to think about how my dog, with his boundless love and carefree nature, had managed to make such an impact on someone's life without even trying. He wasn't just a pet, he was a reminder that sometimes the simplest gestures, like sitting beside someone and sharing a meal, could mean the world. One afternoon, Mrs. Patterson called me with some exciting news. "You're never going to believe this," she said, her voice full of excitement. "Milo got a Christmas present." I paused for a moment, trying to process what she was saying. "A present? From who?" She giggled. "From me, of course. I just couldn't help myself. I had to get him something. It's a little sweater I found at the store. It's not much, but I thought he might enjoy it. You know, for those chilly mornings we get around here." I couldn't help but smile at the thought of Milo in a sweater. It was just the kind of thing I never would have imagined happening, but here we were, with Milo getting gifts from his second family. The next time I visited, Mrs. Patterson handed me the little sweater. It was soft and cozy, with a cute little paw print design. Milo, of course, didn't care about the sweater. He was too busy wagging his tail and sniffing the ground for his next snack, but when I put it on him, he looked ridiculously cute. It was a little snug, but he didn't mind. In fact, he pranced around the yard with a look on his face that said, "This is the life." From that day forward, I started thinking about Milo's secret life in a new light. At first, I had felt a little betrayed, unsure of how to deal with the fact that my dog had been sneaking off behind my back, but now it seemed that Milo was just doing what came naturally to him, spreading joy, making connections, and brightening the lives of those around him. One evening, as we were all sitting together on the porch, Mrs. Patterson leaned over and gave me a soft smile. "I have to tell you," she said quietly, "I don't think I've had a dog this sweet in a long time. Milo has really brought a lot of warmth into this old house." I looked at Milo, who was now curled up at her feet, snoring softly. He was living the good life. And it occurred to me that maybe I hadn't been the one to give him that life after all. Perhaps it was just Milo's nature to find the good in people, to show up when he was needed most, and to fill the space between us with love. And so, as the months went by, Milo's secret life became less of a mystery, and more of a sweet, heartwarming truth. He had 2 homes, 2 families, and an endless supply of love to share. And I, for one, was okay with it. In fact, I was grateful. Milo was teaching me something important. He was reminding me that life doesn't have to be complicated. That sometimes the best thing we can do is show up for the people who need us, even if they don't ask. And that love? It can grow in the most unexpected places. Whether you're a dog with a knack for making friends, or a person trying to understand your furry companion's world. As I walked Milo back home that evening, I looked down at him and smiled. He was wagging his tail again, his little sweater now slightly askew from his playful antics, and I couldn't help but laugh. "Who would have thought, huh, buddy?" I said. "You're living your best life, and I'm just along for the ride." Milo looked up at me with his big soulful eyes and gave me a nudge with his nose. I think he was telling me, life's good, and we're doing just fine. And in that moment I realized something important. Sometimes, the best adventures are the ones we least expect. And no matter how many homes or families Milo had, he would always be my dog, the one who taught me how to love a little more, laugh a little louder, and appreciate the simple joys that life had to offer.